Hague everyone, Kajima Tashiv, and welcome back to episode number 76 of the Inline G Flute podcast with me, your host, Inline G. I hope you're all keeping well, guys. I hope you're all looking after yourselves. This time of year it's so lovely for so many people, but for a lot of people, it can be really shite. So be that extra little bit kind and show a bit more self-compassion to yourself in the next few weeks. And listen, if you're finding times hard right now, let me tell you, you're not alone. Things are hard out there, so just give yourself that extra wee touch of self-love. Now, one of the reasons why so many of us are experiencing a difficult period right now is this constant bombardment of negativity on the news and in the media regarding world affairs. Now, I've talked often and openly about the situation in Palestine on this podcast, and to be honest, it's often bringing me down and it affects my mood a lot. Now, although I feel relatively well educated on the subject, there's a lot I still have to learn on this, so I went onto my social media and I asked you guys to find me a classical musician who's heavily involved in the Palestinian activism movement. And one name came back so many times. So this week's guest is Irish harpist and Palestinian rights activist Rosie Murphy. Now, Rosie created the group Students for Palestine at the Hague Conservatory in the Netherlands, and she is an amazing voice, both online and in person, for the Palestinian cause. So this is an episode talking about classical music's role in activism, as well as Rosie's own involvement and tips on how you can get involved in various ways if you've ever fancied doing so. It's an important topic, guys, and I urge you all to give it a wee listen and go right through to the end. Now, listen, regular Inline G listeners, you know what's about to come up here, but if you're new around here, can you just give me your ear for one wee minute? The Inline G podcast is free and it will always be free. However, if you want to donate to the podcast, you can now do so through the Patreon. On the screen now is the address, and for the audio listeners, it is patreon.com/the Inline G Flute podcast. It costs £5 a month, guys. It's not much. You get 4 episodes of this podcast come rain nor shine every single month. If you listen to a few episodes and you think, oh, that was brilliant, I'd buy Gareth a drink or a coffee to say thank you, you can now do so virtually. I do everything around here on this podcast. This is the definition of a small independent podcast. I do every aspect from graphic design, marketing, research, scripts, audio production, video production, you name it, I do it. I don't have a huge budget for this podcast, so consider paying me for my work. First of all, becoming a patron also helps generate a regular income for this podcast. And second of all, it means I can turn down other work to focus more on it. You'll get a couple of treats along with it. You'll get access to episodes earlier. You'll get Christmas presents. You get your own trading card. You'll get all that. So listen, guys, if you can afford to sign up to the Patreon, please do. It means the world to me and it makes such a huge difference and legitimately keeps this podcast alive. If you can't afford, that's fine. Someone else is paying so that you can listen for free. Now, also remember, you can jump in and out of the Patreon whenever you want. There is no long-term subscription. If you're having a shitty month and you can't afford a £5 that month, that's fine. You just bounce on out. Thank you very much, guys. So, here is this week's Inline G podcast with Rosie Murphy. So, I've got you on for a different reason, but before we chat about everything, would you mind just sort of introducing yourself, letting everyone know who you are, a little bit about yourself?
So I am Rosie Murphy. I'm here today to talk about Palestinian activism, the presence of or lack of in classical music. I'm from Dundalk. I'm a harpist, so I grew up kind of hyper aware of the politics that music, the role that music plays in politics, and how that's not, it's obviously like, growing up in Dundalk, and I'm north of Dundalk, so I'm quite close to Newry, and then across the border, it's quite an echo chamber here, I guess, regarding politics.
So well, considering the fact that you're so close, so for anyone that doesn't know, because a lot of my listeners are American, Dundalk is like, it's more or less just south of where the border is between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So obviously a political hotspot in many ways.
So growing up here, it's really an echo chamber, and then I guess that really shaped my view of the relationship between music and politics, because I guess a lot of people think that music is like apolitical, or maybe this like higher presence of artistry that is exempt from politics, which is obviously not the case. So that then fed into a lot to do with Palestinian activism, which I got involved in mostly since 2021, and then now it's kind of shaped a lot of what I want to do with my career. So,
Okay.
and I'm a harpist. I don't know if I said that already. I'm a classically trained harpist.
Yeah,
So,
who's studied all over the place and done loads of amazing things with the harp and done lots of gigs, and you're a very popular harpist and wonderful harpist, so that's worth mentioning as well. But then when you were saying when you were growing up with the awareness of music not being apolitical and the connection between politics and music, was that in reference to Irish politics growing up?
yeah, so I guess, right, I would notice it maybe across the border, or like doing gigs in Belfast and Newry, and like it's so important there. Like music is so ingrained into Irish politics, and the harp was like a symbol of like resistance and rebellion since the 1600s.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, I mean, the United Irishmen, and most rebellions were fronted with the flag of the golden harp on the green background, and then that became the Irish flag, and of course then it was changed to the tricolour. But for hundreds of years the harp has been actually quite a strong symbol of resistance. And then of course then we have, on the other side of the political spectrum, we have like the fife and the drum, and of course this whole culture of marching. And then yeah, I guess just like music is so political to me growing up in that, and I could like really feel that definitely working across the border, not here obviously, but yeah, being
Yeah, but
exposed.
then even being in Dundalk, you're aware of it. Like obviously, where I'm from, just outside Belfast in Lisburn. So growing up, like music is political. Like straight away, even your music taste. Like there's two very distinct types of traditional music. There's, as you said, there's Irish traditional music, and then there's the fife and drum, which is also Irish to an extent, but it's obviously more influenced by British culture. And straight away, straight away, if you say what instrument you play, people will be able to tell you like where your background lies or where your political allegiances traditionally lie then. So if you say you play the flute, for example, it's kind of both, because the flute can be using Irish trad music and in like the Orange Order and the British side of things. But for example, the harp, if someone said they played the harp, that would usually make me think that they're from a Catholic or Republican or pro-Irish background.
Yeah, and I would get that reception as well, talking to certain people. And even then, when I lived in London and I worked a lot in the south of England for different orchestras and stuff, and I would kind of, not as much in England, that would be more if I said I was Irish. Sometimes I would get a bit of a funny reaction.
Yeah.
But in definitely in the north of Ireland, if I say I play the harp, I do get like, I can kind of gauge from people's reactions. It is actually, it's so, yeah, it's very, I don't know, like kind of like a poison or something in the way people are reacting to this. It's like, for the fact that an instrument can kind of like elicit some sort of, I don't know, bigotry. It was
Yeah.
very eye-opening.
Yeah, it is. It's very strange growing up as well. It was a very strange thing for all of us, I think. But then you did say, and I do agree with that sentiment, that for me, music has always been political, and I think it's almost impossible to create any kind of art that is apolitical. For me, the actual existence of art in itself is a political act. So this idea that music can be exempt from politics, but then as I said, being Irish, we're aware of it to a very basic level because of the kind of music we make and the instruments we play. But especially classical music, I feel like classical music gets this by ball a little bit of like, oh no, it's a higher art form. We're above politics. We're above all these kind of things.
Yeah, and that in itself is like an inherently political statement as well. To even like brand something as apolitical is definitely a huge statement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we get into that a lot. But so I want to talk then before that about how you started with your Palestinian rights activism then. Where did it come about?
So it kind of was all intrinsically linked, like kind of the say like anti-colonial sentiment that I kind of grew up with. Obviously, I think everyone on the in Ireland will kind of resonate with that. Well, most people anyway. I guess that's why this culture exists within Ireland. And I, yeah, as I said, echo chamber of Dundalk. It in a way is kind of maybe damaging because you don't think you have to speak up as much when you're surrounded
Okay.
by people that all think the same. So then, when I was 15, I was sent to school in Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
I was sent to a boarding school. I got a music scholarship into a private boarding school, which was Protestant, and like definitely there were more political a broader spectrum of politics there. Like one time they brought in a British soldier to come and talk to the school about his work. It was kind of like a semi-recruiting thing, which I just was shocked by. And just this whole thing kind of really opened my eyes that you really have to speak out, and like not everyone thinks the same. So this was what I won't say like radicalized me, obviously, but it definitely made me extremely hyper aware of
That's
this.
a good way of wording it, yeah.
And then I moved to London then, and then obviously that also was broader, and I was never exposed to anyone that was, say, like any Zionist rhetoric or pro-Israeli statements. And then when I was in London, I was definitely exposed to this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, funny. I mean, a lot of people would have come to study from, say, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to the conservatories in London. And then one of my best friends, Riwa, was Lebanese, and then we kind of formed this really beautiful friendship, and this really opened my eyes, and she talked to me a lot about Lebanese history and the wars that happened there, of course. And then this was kind of my moment where I thought I have to start doing something. And then just being like, the classical music world is so politically sterile. And then I would be with students that are studying, say, politics and history, or people that aren't students at all and are so outspoken and passionate about this. And then I'd go into the conservatory, and like, it was just, they're so removed from it.
Yeah.
There's no one encourages them to even anything. There's no
even to express an idea. That never came up. Like, even in my education, there was no point. And it's so strange because in every other genre and type of music, politics plays a central role. I can't think of a single political or musical movement that hasn't had at some form some politicized event attached to it. Everything, pop music, obviously, jazz music hugely with its links to the slave trade, anything, punk rock music, obviously very left wing, and classical music, it never came up. You never even when I was at college, we never did themed concerts of anything that was even slightly political.
Fundraising or anything.
No.
You're never taught how music can be anything but self-serving.
Yeah.
And this definitely is deeply entrenched in every classical musician. Most of them, I'm not going to say every, because there's obviously really people out there doing amazing work. So then it was COVID, so obviously there was nothing really happening. And then I went to The Hague, and that was 2021, 2020. And then obviously there was the annexation, the de facto annexation. And then we were all taking to the streets, and this really, I guess the backlash of the police and the state, the Netherlands, was so huge that, I just decided that that's that. And they're not only to be involved in like demonstrations, but we have such amazing, well, not amazing, but we just have something so unusual that we can bring to the table in terms of like, organizing and even bringing music to like a protest and demonstrations. And like, everyone loves a bit of music, and if you like, you just have so much to offer, and we should be encouraged to use this and not just keep it in a concert hall for a certain demographic of people that can afford a ticket to a classical music concert.
Exactly, which is something I talk about a lot in this podcast. It's one of the things, I think almost everything around the classical music industry, apart from the actual music, I detest so strongly. Everything about the industry is so against everything that I stand for that I hate everything about it apart from the music. The music is the one thing that I'm like, okay, that's good, I can leave that, but everything else, I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. But then when you start to go out and protest and do these things in Holland, were you doing any protests when you were in London?
But very small ones, and there wasn't as much of a I guess it wasn't huge numbers at the time, because there wasn't the media outcry at the time.
So I'm curious then, did you see, first of all, a difference between studying in the United Kingdom as opposed to studying in the Netherlands with the general attitude towards Palestinian activism?
No, so it was empty there, and it was empty in the Netherlands. Maybe it was a bit worse in the Netherlands.
Really?
Yeah, definitely a lot less in the conservatory. And I mean, I find it quite difficult. In the UK and in Ireland, there are like quotas, and you need diversity in the conservatories and on the curriculum. And then in the Netherlands, this just like doesn't exist. So it's illegal to
Yeah.
have any quotas regarding race, sexuality. So then the conservatory was just so white and European, and the whole curriculum was just white European men. And of course, when there's no presence of anything else other than that in the conservatory, it's again like it's just so self-contained, and there's no room or space to even talk about anyone else, or nor would you even think about it if it's all you're surrounded by and studying. So I had a big problem with this actually, and I noticed that with a lot of conservatories. Again, the thing is that we hate classical music, but we love the music. But I also had to really question myself and look very inwards, because classical music is such an inherently colonial genre of music. And then I thought, why do I find it so beautiful? Or like, why do I find this to be, this like intelligent art music? Why am I playing this and not playing other music? So I really had to,
And
yeah, it's like, I guess in a sense, we're all like institutionalized, and I guess like my musical tastes have been a bit colonized, because like it's not any better or more beautiful or more intellectual than any other genre of music.
mhm.
And I did grow up thinking that, and I like thought I was pretty smart and sophisticated, listening
Yeah.
to these composers, whereas like I'm not.
No,
Like
I
it's not for
entirely
me.
agree.
Yeah. So then to kind of examine the conservatory in that sense, I was, you know, I am I mean, music conservatories are notorious for being, like stuffy, and they like conserve the traditions of classical music, and that is their goal. Like they are preserving in a some of a sense like a lost art, or like a dying art. I think as classical musicians we also think like, oh my god, I have to like keep playing this, this most beautiful music, because no one's playing it anymore, and has this like looming death over it, and we think like we have to do this. And yeah, we have to preserve this music, but like we also need like radical change within the institutions while playing this music.
Oh, hugely. So it's so dated. Some of it is. Do you know what I think the most shocking thing was? Well, like I'm sure you're in a similar boat, but I've grew up with classical music for so long, and I've been in it. Like I studied it when I was 18, and I haven't really done anything else in my life, not properly, not as a career. So I've been so involved in it, and you're in that bubble. And the minute you start to go outside of the bubble and meet people that aren't classical musicians, you realize that nobody really gives a shit anymore about it. Like it's so important to us, and then you get out there, like people are just going about their days. They don't care about it. Nobody knows who half
Mhm.
these composers are. They might know the name, they know a tune or two. They don't really care, and it's not that important. Which I actually thought was a huge relief when I started thinking that. I thought, yeah, it's not that big a deal actually. For example, if I play a wrong note in a concert, it might seem like the end of the world at that time. The minute you walk outside, like, nobody gives a shit. Nobody
Yeah.
cares in the slightest, and nor should they. It's always been a dying art form, and there's always been some kind of initiative to save classical music. Like if it hasn't died now, it's probably not going to. And if it is going to die, it's going to die. And yeah,
So
maybe
yeah.
that's not a bad thing, but definitely needs a lot of revolution within it, because I know it's the same thing at music college, especially in Germany. Germany's a little bit better with some things, but it is still so white, so male dominated, and also money. It's an upper class, it's a middle upper class art. You very rarely meet working class musicians, which means then naturally when you're in conservatoire, you're not having the kind of conversations that if I go to a bar with my friends now, I've got a lot of Irish friends. We all play like GAA together, or we watch soccer together and things like that. And you're meeting normal people and you're having the political conversations. The conversations I was having with my colleagues or people I studied with at music college were totally different when it came to politics. And it felt like that was normal. It
Mhm.
was nearly always either apolitical or right wing, but sort of hidden. Not like overtly right wing, not Nigel Farage right wing, but old school Tory, old
Yeah.
school conservatism. And I felt like that was normal, which is so weird for a bunch of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds studying on their bachelors for in the arts to
Mhm.
all be slightly right wing.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it's not unusual either. in these situations, like maybe for other students at 18 in other universities, or like even in art school, if you're studying like art, um, the general consensus or like space or discourse in these institutions is so different to music conservatories. Like it really is like traveling back, I don't know how many years. I don't even know if it was ever normal for such young people to have such conservative views, but it's just so normalized in a music conservatory and classical music world. So
Yeah, I it's bizarre, and I think maybe one thing that does help, I found that helped a little bit, is meeting more Irish people.
yeah.
And I don't want to sit here and say like we're perfect as Irish people. That's absolutely not the case. But when it comes to certainly things, like generally Ireland is a much more left wing country than the UK, France, Germany, these kind of places. But the political conversation around Palestine, certainly that all kicked off for me when I started to spend more time around Irish people, because I felt like it's so normalized in Ireland. Like if you go to Ireland tomorrow, if anyone goes to Ireland tomorrow and you go into Dublin, you will see very openly in most of the shopping streets and the busy areas around Dublin, you'll see Palestinian flags flying everywhere. Ireland is one of the very few first world developed nations that is overtly pro-Palestine and has no qualms about it. And across the entire political spectrum of Ireland, right from the left to the right, it's one thing that actually kind of unites them all, is because of obviously a shared colonial past. But I find like hanging out with Irish people helped me a lot with that. Do you have the same thing? Do you have, like, when you're doing protests and any kind of activism at all, are you noticing a lot of Irish people turning up to these things?
Yeah, so I would have met a lot more Irish people than any other nationality other than Dutch, definitely in the Netherlands anyway. In London, not as many, but it would have been a lot more Arab people. I didn't end up meeting many Irish people there.
Okay.
In the encampments in Amsterdam, there was like Irish flags everywhere. It was huge Irish student presence. So obviously, and then in the conservatory in The Hague, there is not that many Irish people anyway. So, but then getting onto also with the conservatory, I thought there has to be something done about this. So I started an organization called Conservatory Students for Palestine. And I worked quite closely with Students for Palestine in the Netherlands, which is like a very big, a broad front of students based in Leiden University. And they have been campaigning for Palestinian rights for, I don't know how long. I would say the group was established over 10 years ago by a group of students that were studying at the time, maybe even over 10 years ago. And so I started this organization, and it was quite slow to begin, and I think a lot of people were very scared to get involved.
Why do you think they're scared?
Well, there has been such repercussions from not only like university institutions, but within music, classical music. I guess it's not, as we all know, no performing arts is like a fair playing, like a level playing field for employment. So once you get on the bad side of someone, you could be ruled out for a lot of jobs. I mean, we've seen this with Jason Gillum, the classical pianist. I mean, he dedicated a piece to journalists who were killed and targeted by IDF soldiers, and I mean, his recitals were cancelled, and now he's suing the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. And I'm no doubt this has caused him to be blacklisted from other Zionist leaning institutions, music institutions. So we do see this a lot coming up, that people have lost their jobs, and in every job field. But with classical music, I guess, or music in general, you're a lot less protected in terms of workers' rights. Like you generally, you don't have any rights really. A lot of people are freelance, so you have nothing to fall back on.
No, and with the case with Jason, that was an incredible case. I think that was one of the ones recently that really shocked me, because even the way it's being reported in the media and all, I was like, has everyone lost their fucking minds? What is going on here? Like, I was shocked. I did an episode specifically on a lot about what happened with that case with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. And then also it got me to think, like, why is classical music, I wouldn't say secretly, but it is sort of leaning towards, like, there is a lot of Zionism in classical music, and I've always sort of thought why that is. I did a little bit of research, but have you got any idea as to why you think it is generally quite pro-Israel as an art form? Or an industry?
I would guess it probably just like dates back to how classical music is a colonial tool in a sense, I guess. Like mostly when a country is colonized, their indigenous art is destroyed, and then classical music will take precedent as the like sophisticated art form. So I mean, we see that definitely with the Native American Act that was passed, and children were taken away from their families and sent to boarding schools, Native American children, and classically trained in music. That was really pushed. And then obviously their indigenous music was eradicated, more or less. They lost a lot of their
Wow.
indigenous song because obviously it was the oral tradition.
Yeah.
Same in Ireland, same everywhere really. So I do actually say that like classical music is kind of like a colonial tool that has transcended through everything, because no matter, I mean, it's a Western form, it's a Western art,
Yeah.
and it's like all over the world, even in non-Western conforming societies, it's seen as the, you know, the sophisticated and civilized and intelligent music. Like yes, China have Western symphony models as their symphony orchestra. Everything is Western conforming when it comes to classical music.
Yeah.
So then again, we see Israel are settler colonial, and they are definitely pushing classical music at the forefront of some of their propaganda.
Oh yeah.
And we see things like Brand Israel, which was a propaganda campaign where the Israeli state are funding all art forms, celebrities, sports, and they're touring these internationally, as well as inviting artists and celebrities to the country. And yeah, it's just to, I guess, normalize them, and which is art washing, and art washing is a process of legitimization, manipulation, and diversion. So it's
Okay.
celebrating the colonizers' art form, concealing and promoting right wing ideologies, and just washing their war crimes, all while trying to delegitimize indigenous art.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, and I suppose that was always kind of the goal of Israel, wasn't it? Was to, um, yeah, I remember reading a quote about this. Actually, I heard this in a podcast recently, and it was, oh, I'm going to get the name of the guy wrong now. But it was someone who was involved with the British government at the time when mandatory Palestine was set up, and then it was brought into Israel. And they said the goal of establishing the state of Israel was to create a little Jewish Ulster in a sea of hostile Arabism. And I remember reading that going, holy fuck, right? That one obviously really hit home, because we know exactly what the idea of the state of Northern Ireland was
Mhm.
essentially to keep Northern Ireland there, and yeah, to keep British influence very strong there. And that's essentially what Israel is. And as we get more anti-Middle East propaganda pushed out as well, we look at Israel, we look at them coming over doing classical music and playing in our football tournaments, go, oh yeah, they're the good ones then. They look like us, they do our things, they play like us, they do everything like us. They're on our side.
Mhm.
And the other ones, they're not on our side. And
Mhm.
that's essentially where it just all builds up into it. And it is driving me insane. But anyway, yeah, out of curiosity, have you ever been accused of anti-Semitism?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, so as part of the Conservatory Students for Palestine, our main concern was the ties that the conservatory had to the Jerusalem Academy of Music and Dance. So
Mm-hmm.
this this conservatory in Jerusalem is actually situated in the Hebrew University campus, which is
Okay.
part of this campus is on occupied land in illegally occupied land in East Jerusalem.
Yep.
They house they have an IDF military base on the campus, which is one of the only military presence in East Jerusalem, of course,
Yeah.
legally. And the conservatory boasts this like IDF outstanding musician program, which actually makes the conservatory a quasi-military academy, because most of their students are serving while studying music.
Wow.
They
Okay.
also get scholarships to do this, and they fundraise a lot for the military. And as well, the Hebrew University just provide them with logistics equipment and personnel. So it's intrinsically linked. There's no, and also, yeah. So we were just extremely concerned with the partnership with this
Yeah.
conservatory. Not
Which
only
is a
because
common thing as well. A lot of like student activists as well. A lot of universities hold very close ties to Israeli academics, and that's usually one of the calls within the boycott movements is for them to cut ties with Israeli academics who are overtly promoting propaganda, Israeli state propaganda. So sorry, I continue, but I'm saying that is a common thing with these boycott movements.
really, and it is important to adhere to these cultural and academic boycotts because they are coming from Palestinians, and it is important to listen to what they are asking for. But not only that, sorry, just the Jerusalem Academy. Well, I guess the conservatories and the Association of European Conservatories. So the Jerusalem Academy is in the AEC, which is the Association of European Conservatories, which means it's tied to every European conservatory.
Every great, yeah.
But not only that, but the Hague actually had a direct partnership with the conservatory. The Hague cut ties immediately with Belarusian and Russian conservatories following the invasion of Ukraine. And I guess all we were asking for was the same
equivalent treatment.
So we did campaign for this, for the cutting of ties, and we had countless meetings with management. Providing the evidence and just, asking for this quite politely. We didn't host any kind of mobilization or action or encampment. So at these meetings, there was always this like looming thing like, okay, well, this is your voice, but what about the voice of the Israeli students? And I said, that's fine. I obviously invite them to the meeting then. So we did have a meeting with 2 Israeli students, which I didn't know how it would go because I did speak with one of them before after I made the organization, and he was very receptive and supportive. So of course, because the organization is for anyone, of course, we did have Israeli students that were members of the organization, and I mean, we had these 2 students come in and was very calm talking at the head of the conservatory and stuff. And then one student we were just kind of stating facts and talking. And then one student did turn around, who happened to be sitting beside me, and say, do you condemn Hamas though? And I did say, I'm not here to do that today. We're here to talk about our ties. I said, maybe that would be discussed if we had ties to, I don't know, a conservatory linked to Hamas, but that isn't the case, so I can't discuss that now. And then I was then, of course, called anti-Semitic.
By that person directly or in a publication?
During the meeting. So which the management allowed him to raise his voice and shout at me and call me anti-Semitic.
How do you react to that?
Oh, very calmly. I mean, it is a common thing, especially in The Hague, to receive quite a bit of verbal abuse. I mean, one time getting off a tram, I was wearing a keffiyeh and a woman told me to drop dead and pushed me on the ground.
Wow. Okay.
And this was the time of the ICJ rulings.
Which ICJ rulings are these? Which ones?
This was in February.
Okay. So not the ones, because obviously the day we're recording this yesterday, wasn't it? The arrest warrant was issued for Netanyahu, but not these ones in.
No, sorry, that's the ICC. So
yes,
ICJ
of course.
is a less powerful ruling. This was around the time of South Africa's trial.
Yes.
So it was very intense there. But I was on my way to the ICJ at the time wearing the keffiyeh, and then this woman did this, and I was quite upset, and I did go to the police. They didn't do anything, and then I walked up to the ICJ, and then I realized Greta Thunberg was beside me. So I was like, I don't care anymore.
Wow. Okay, that is quite good. You get to speak to Greta?
No, I didn't want to bother her. A lot of people were like coming up to her, but I was just kind of like beside her by chance, and then
cool.
Yeah, it was actually, I'd love to see her there. She was always in The Hague at the time. So yeah, I just thought, I love Greta.
Yeah,
so
do you know what? To be honest, stupidly, like obviously I know you studied at The Hague, and I didn't really make the connection in my head of The Hague being also The Hague where the criminal courts are, and I kind of didn't make that. So it obviously is a very politically charged place, as I can imagine.
Oh, completely, which is just crazy at how, again, sterile the conservatory was. So you're on the streets and it's like mass hysteria almost between people that were supporting Israel in the trial, and then pro-Palestinian people, anti-genocide supporters, and then all the streets was just crazy. And my biggest issue with also the conservatory was they never acknowledged that this was happening.
Okay.
That we had a Palestinian student in the school at the time. She was never contacted. We then found out Israeli students were all privately contacted. Yeah, and it just was just a terrible atmosphere. And I mean, obviously ignoring this and allowing this to fester, this kind of thing, obviously because people were being exposed to it on their phones and on the streets, and then it would come into the school, and then just no talk about it just did actually allow a lot of like I would say anti-Arab sentiment to
Yeah.
grow within the conservatory. So definitely the setting up the Conservatory Students for Palestine was definitely a very like a necessity. It should have been there for a long time. There
Yeah.
was just no output or anywhere for people to talk, or no sense of community. Or I mean, again, people are seeing these horrible images on their phone and just walking and then just continuing life, like going to a music lesson afterwards and just being absolutely traumatized by the atrocities. So it's really important to allow for students to have an output for this.
Of course it is. Yeah. So you guys have a commit or like an organization for it, but what advice would you give to someone who's maybe studying in a music college similar to that is totally sterile, as most of them are politically sterile, has these views but thinks, fuck, maybe I'm alone here, maybe nobody shares my opinion. Where do you think they should go? What would be your first piece of advice to someone in that situation?
Well, in terms of for their own mental health, is, I guess, the utmost importance for a lot of people. Because before you even want to start helping someone or getting involved in activism, you really have to make sure that you're okay. Because I do see this a lot in organizations where people just absolutely burn out and have a terrible mental health crisis because you definitely put a lot of things above yourself. A lot of people do. So I do think that that's extremely important. And also in a lot of conservatories, I don't know about, I guess a lot of them would have student unions. I know the one in The Hague, we just didn't even have a student union.
Oh, wow.
So there was kind of no support for students there. I guess when you're studying in conservatory, a lot of them do have a student union. I would say go there.
Yeah.
I'm sure that that's great to talk to. And then obviously professional musicians. I think just also have an output for this, and I think we're so lucky that we have music as an output. So I don't know about you, but when I'm feeling terrible and then I play for a bit, it is definitely emotional release, and you don't have to practice your pieces, but play
for fun,
play a great piece of music, and then use that. Like, if you feel helpless, you're not helpless in this situation. You can volunteer to play at fundraising, concerts, or get in touch with Palestinian organizations in your area or in your country and say, like, I'm a classical violinist, I would love to offer my services, or I'm a sound engineer. I can help you out for the next concerts or demonstrations for sound, just anything. There's so much that you can do actively as a musician. You're actually really valuable to this kind of movement, because no one loves anything more than a sing song.
Yeah, that's incredibly true.
Can help with this, learn a couple of course, promote Palestinian artists and music. And again, existence is resistance, and there has been cultural genocide there. So learning their folk tunes and songs in itself is extremely important and very powerful thing to do. But then bring this then to a protest, or play this at your next concert.
Out of curiosity, on Palestinian folk music, how much Palestinian folk music have you played, and can you describe it a little bit? Like, what kind of style is it? They do use a different, I know a lot of Middle Eastern places use the slightly different scale, don't they?
So a lot of it would be written in the Arab Maqam.
Okay, which is?
It's microtonal, actually.
Cool.
So there was a whole different tuning system, which we can do with some difficulty. I know a lot of classical musicians have been probably given a contemporary piece with microtones. And normally we hate them. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes,
but that's mainly the issue,
or the point of it. But when it's in the context of Arab music, it is so beautiful, and you will think, why are we playing these diatonic scales all the time?
That
So
is cool.
yeah, so with the harp then I did actually some Arab Makam music on it where I would have detuned the harp into
Okay.
quarter tones and then played. Yeah, I actually had a really wonderful opportunity of working with Saad Haddad, who is now he's based in the States and he's the resident composer for the California Symphony Orchestra at the moment. He's
Cool.
based
Okay.
in Columbia University. So he
Yep.
wrote a really beautiful piece of music based on the Arab Makam for the harp, which I got to premiere in The Hague then in May as part of a project recital I did on kind of reclaiming the harp and harking it back to its origins, which is the Middle East. It originated in Mesopotamia and then obviously traveled around. It became the national instrument of Iraq, Syria. It's still the national instrument of Egypt. Obviously, it traveled through North Africa and then came to Ireland. So we have this beautiful link in
Yeah.
music. And I did do a project working with Irish and composers of this origin, and this is how the Makam came up. So these things are important to
Yeah.
also play, I guess, marginalized composers or composers that are not represented the same as are the canon.
Yeah, and that's also, I think that's a general thing as well when it comes to anything outside the accepted composers. I think there is a little bit of a stigma attached to it of, oh, the reason we don't play this music is because it's bad. There's a reason why it's not played, and the reason is because the quality of the music is not there, which is absolutely not the case. When you look into any kind of history of classical music, you'll see there's a lot of reasons why a lot of people didn't get heard. A lot of very strange reasons as well. So it is good to do. And also, that's self-serving as a musician. You're getting to do other music, other projects, cool ideas as well. Like it'll do you good as a musician to play this kind of music, I imagine.
Definitely, and it's like culturally enriching, of course.
Yeah, so
But
it's
just
win-win-win.
back to the Palestinian folk music.
Yep.
There's just such beautiful pieces of music that I worked with a Palestinian singer in The Hague, Sarah Darvish. She was also studying the conservatory, and she obviously exposed me to such beautiful pieces. Of course, there's Motini, which kind of became the unofficial anthem of Palestine, which means my homeland. There's just, which is kind of, I guess, that's not in any way mathematic. This is more based, it was more classical sounding, I would say. It was set to music by a Lebanese composer based on a Palestinian poet text. So there's just so much that you should know, and there's a reason that we don't know this music as well. I mean, also on your own time, you could also just research it. That's also advice I give to musicians. Like, there is so much that you should be doing, and again, not even in an activist overt sense, but there are certain things that you just should adhere to, especially we can also then talk about the BDS cultural and academic boycott. I mean, you should boycott all Israeli state-funded art institutions.
Yep, 100%.
Performances, composers, artists, TV shows, film, sports. By doing this, I mean, we can see this from the boycott of South Africa, that this did actually lead to a mass movement. And it took its time to find its legs, but it did work, and it became a mass boycott, and it did push for sanctions.
Yeah, so there is obviously many ways to do that. So if anyone is trying to get involved in some kind of form of activism or support for Palestine, one of the ways I would recommend straight away is to download the No Thanks app. I can't remember what you call it in German now, for anyone who's listening from Germany. It is translated, it's not called No Thanks in every language, but you can essentially scan the barcode of any product, food, drink, all that kind of stuff, and it will tell you, basically it'll rate what links it has to the Israeli state and whether you should be buying it or not. And it's quite a good way to start. It's quite a good way to start. Do a little bit of activism, just a scan. You shop it and see, and you'd be surprised how many things are actively from the Israeli state. And you just go, right, well, I'm not going to buy that brand next time. I'll buy another brand. Small little steps. I think that's one of the first places I would start if I was trying to recommend it to someone.
Yeah, completely. There's so many little things that you can do in your day that if you are starting and you are hesitant of backlash, or if you are unsure. Or, I mean, not everyone is so outspoken. I'm just such an angry Irish woman.
Yeah.
Like,
We have a great history of Ireland has a great history of Irish women who are very angry and activists. It's great. We're very proud of our angry women in Ireland.
Yeah, I just can't escape it. It's really just running through my veins at this point, and I just can't hold my tongue, and it has gotten me into trouble at times. But obviously not everyone is like that, and everyone has their own way of doing this. And there are just small things that you can do in your day-to-day life that are just will be impactful, especially with the arts. I mean, just by boycotting it culturally and academically, I couldn't urge people to do that enough, and also to examine their own institutions, or who am I working for, what are their ties, or who are they funded by this. A lot of you'd be surprised at how many art institutions have direct funding links to the Israeli state. Not only conservatories, but orchestras.
Major orchestras. I did a bit of research on this recently for an episode, and it's not hard to find. You can go on to any major orchestra's website and look at their donors, and go down and find whatever they call their highest category of donor. Normally it's like platinum donors or like super partners, whatever it is. You'd be amazed how many. Go and find some of the companies, and then Google the companies and stick the word Israel in afterwards and see what pops up. It is unbelievable sometimes what's popping up in these places.
Completely. Like it's the funding behind it really that is propelling this. Definitely in the classical music world, again, as we say, it's a dying art form. So once someone starts funding it, they probably do become extremely important to the.
Oh, of course they do. Yeah.
So, and there are terms that come with funding. And that is hence the silencing. And we see that in Germany, we see that in the Netherlands. It's a lot to do with the funding. I mean, even with German state funding, withdrawing for any pro-Palestinian sentiment.
One thing I've actually seen a little bit of a rise in, which is quite nice, is obviously, well, not obviously, but people put stickers on their instrument cases and on their boxes and things like that. Now, I can understand you might not want to stick a Palestinian flag bang on it. That can be quite a lot. But also the movement of the watermelon emoji really starting to pick up. This is a slightly subtler way to just show that you're sharing the views. And you're making someone else feel comfortable. If you're in a rehearsal and they see someone else with that on it, you're sort of welcoming it in. It's almost like a little sign to say, it's okay. That's not a bad idea to have either. It's something I've seen a lot of people do, and I think it's pretty cool. And I've seen musicians with that, and I've seen them like on the train with the violin case. I see a little watermelon emoji and I go, yeah, okay. Now I know I'm in a safe space with you. If it comes up to it, we can talk about this.
That has been something that's come up quite a lot, and I have discussed this with other organizations or Palestinian people. And I do, though I guess the symbol of the watermelon does come from the banning of their flag and the silencing of them. And there has been a bit of like mixed feelings regarding the watermelon symbol for a lot of people, just because it is, again, you're kind of playing into the fact that maybe having a Palestinian flag isn't okay, whereas like you could have an Irish flag on your case and it's not controversial. A flag in itself of a state that exists isn't a controversial statement.
It shouldn't be.
So I do think sometimes maybe the watermelon is maybe playing into the silencing again of the culture.
Yeah. Okay, fair point then. I stand corrected in that then. Yeah, just stick the flag on. To be honest, flags aren't controversial. I mean, I'm saying this as a person that comes from Belfast, where flags are the most controversial thing in the entire city, but it is still something to do. Actually, on that, one little tip I would give people, so it's something that we've done here. I live in Cologne, where Cologne is a famously liberal city, but again, big disparity between the population and the government. For example, when you pop down to the city hall here, right in the city of the old town, there are four flags hanging. There's the European Union flag, the German flag, the Cologne coat of arms, like the Kirch flag, and then the Israeli flag. And it's very odd that one's one of the four ones flying when there can be so many other flags, or you could just not fly the Israeli flag. There's no real need for it. I think it was as a response to the October attacks, but it stayed up.
Wow.
Which is very strange. And every time we walk past, I'm always like, oh, for fuck's sake. But one of the nice things you can do that people have found here is I run the Irish music sessions here in Cologne. And in the Irish music sessions, it's a proper Irish-run pub as well by Irish people. First of all, they're brilliant fun. They're great crack. You can 100% wear a Palestinian flag, you're in a totally safe space in an Irish pub. I can nearly guarantee it. If you go to an Irish pub, it's actually Irish run, or if you go to an Irish music session, you go to events with Irish artists, you're going to be fine, and you're going to find people there, and you can express that a little bit more. So it's maybe not a bad idea to look into that as well, because I could not almost guarantee it that if you meet an Irish person in or some kind of Irish art form, they're going to be pro-Palestine and they're going to be open about it. So it's not bad to maybe find those little spaces. If you're trying to find somewhere where you know it's going to be safe, an Irish art event is definitely a good place to start. Are there any further resources or any other musicians in the industry, or anyone involved in the industry adjacent, that people should go check out if they're interested in anything more here?
Of course, yeah. I mean, well, one of my favorite artists at the moment is Rosie Al Sharif. I saw her over the summer at a festival, and I mean, she's performed a lot on Irish national television and internationally. She's an Irish Palestinian singer, and she is blending these two worlds of sound so beautifully. So I do think that is definitely someone I would recommend checking out. And then, of course, there's other Palestinian artists that are based around like Jordan and Lebanon, and one of these is Zayn. She's a pop singer, but she does
came across her,
yeah. She actually is the cousin of Sarah Darvish, who I perform with in the Hague. Yeah, so I came across her that way, and she's an incredible artist, and she does actually dedicate then, of course, a lot of her music. And she will fundraise, and it is to raise awareness of what is happening, and also her music is just very beautiful and also very fun. So I do recommend everyone also to go onto the BDS website surrounding their cultural and academic boycott, the PACBI. This is really important for all artists and just people in their everyday lives to be aware of these guidelines, and because it is kind of the baseline and the bare minimum that we can be doing right now.
Great. And we talked about this a little bit off air, but while we're on air, I'm going to ask you quickly your opinions on the East Western Divan Orchestra, so Daniel Barenboim's orchestra, where it features Israeli and Palestinian musicians. It was formed quite a while ago. You said something very interesting, which I haven't thought about as much, so can you please tell them what you think?
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion, and also it would be in accordance with BDS's guidelines, which is we should not really condone any kind of normalization projects, which this does. We're normalizing the Israeli state. These kind of like intercultural. Projects actually are extremely damaging for the
interesting
cause.
Okay, so there you are. That's very interesting. It's not something I actually would have thought of. I think you naturally associate these things with peace, but there's been a few things online about it as well recently that's made me rethink a lot of things. A few things Barenboim has said as well that I've been a bit like, oh, okay, I'm starting to rethink it all myself.
Israeli state funded as well, so you have to keep an eye on where the funding's coming from and where the initiative is coming from.
I think that's the key point.
These projects are normally one-sided, and again, the normalization, a lot of Zionist and pro-Israeli state musicians will use these as examples of, we're not so bad. We even play with people from there. It again just feeds into the whole dehumanization of the whole people. I mean, you should not be glorified for allowing these people into an orchestra or to play together. Like you should. These people who are living as second-class citizens and are being ethnically cleansed.
Do you know, it's interesting to say that I am doing my absolute best to try and get a musician from that orchestra onto this podcast, but they are very hesitant to do any kind of media stuff. I'm particularly trying to get someone from the Palestinian side, to be totally honest. And I have been told by multiple people you have to be careful who you get on from that orchestra, because they do have very mixed opinions on it. And I can actually attest to that fully, because I'll not say the person's name for obvious reasons, but I actually did a gig with someone from that orchestra recently who I didn't know was in the orchestra, and they're Israeli. And as soon as I heard they were Israeli, I'm sort of like, oh, fuck, right, I have to be careful what I say. I don't want to start a fight before a gig, but at the same time, you have to have conversations about these things. And then when I heard they were in that orchestra, I was a bit like, oh, okay, then they're probably not fully pro-Israeli state. Not the case at all. Because as soon as we had a few drinks on us, some things came out. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, you've got to be kidding me. You're meant to be playing in a peace orchestra and you're saying some horrific shit. So it's maybe rethink that entire thing. And I'm doing my best to get a musician on from it, but I only want to get them on under the... I don't want to get anyone that's going to be like, I can't say this, I can't say that. Because then I'm thinking, no, there's something fishy there. I'm only getting someone on who can fully, freely express their opinions. As the politic rages on and we're trying to make the genocide, but we don't use the word conflict anymore. As that continues, the big link people make with classical music is that orchestra. So it's immediately the point of call, but I'm still very careful about it. I know there's former musicians from it, and that might be a little bit more of an interesting take, is to find someone who's left the orchestra and can speak a little bit more freely. But you do, even that. I remember recently when I was doing the podcast episode on it, I was talking a little bit about the whole anti-Semitism thing and the cries of anti-Semitism against Palestinian activists and give a definition of anti-Semitism. But I found a couple of definitions from, it wasn't overtly an Israeli website, but it was something along those lines, and had the usual definitions. Obviously anti-Semitism is a hard thing to define, so they had a whole list of different definitions, but one of the bullet points in it was basically any kind of derogatory comments towards Israel as a state, and that was classified as anti-Semitism. You're going, there we are. That's where you're starting to see it, because it's not anti-Semitic to criticize the Israeli government in the slightest. Criticizing the government is not anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of these things.
As we know as well, that has just given rise to extreme anti-Semitism as well by affiliating a genocidal state to a people.
Exactly. So, yeah.
I have seen, and even with friends who are, or colleagues rather, that have been in the Conservatory Students for Palestine and have been targeted at protests for being visibly Jewish, like say wearing their kippah to their protests, and was the only person arrested. Or we can see that also with the arrest rates in the States of how many people arrested have been Jewish compared to the population of Jewish people there. It has given rise. So again, we're just seeing this all feed into hatred and polarization, and they're damaging the Arab and Jewish people.
Exactly. Yeah, it's overall damaging. It should be, actually, it's worth noting on that, just as we get towards the end of this then, that if anyone is Jewish that's listening to this, and you're very welcome in all the protest movements, you're entirely welcome within Palestinian activism, and that's incredibly important to specify, because I think they think they're not welcome, or there's an idea, certainly portrayed by the media, that Jewish people are not welcome. That is absolutely the opposite.
Yeah, and they're so not only welcome but valued, and to see like say a Jewish bloc or organizations present in these spaces, and you're just so valued because you are also suffering from the terrible hatred that's now being perpetuated, and this is all being perpetuated by the same state, the same entity, the same people. So not only are you welcome, but like this is for you as well, really. There's 100%.
Beautifully put. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Rosie. Is there anything else you would like to say before you go? Anything you'd like to make anyone aware of, or anything you'd like me to link in the biography, the description, or anything?
Just regarding what's been happening and the cultural genocide that is perpetrated there amongst the ethnic cleansing is how I just wanted to raise awareness that every single cultural institution in Gaza has been destroyed. Every concert hall, music, there was a music conservatory, any art institutions, galleries have all been destroyed. One of the largest collections of musical instruments in the world has been bombed and destroyed, which was the Al Sununu Foundation for Arts and Culture. It's located there. That's been completely eradicated. All of the universities within the first 100 days of the onslaught were destroyed. Every single student there is without education. And that, just that students, amongst everyone else, just it's a free-for-all. So artists are being murdered. Anyone involved in the arts, writers, authors, composers are all being targeted, and that we, as I said, everything I said earlier, our real duty is also to keep this culture alive and to promote what has been left. And even if we learn one song, we can keep that one song alive, because I can guarantee you that there have been, all the archives and libraries have been now destroyed. So I'm
That's
sure
lost
so much art and song and writing and stories, as well as, of course, the stories of the people that have been murdered at the hands of the Israel state. So again, that is really why we're pushing for this. Again, it is a genocide, and we are losing this people, this culture, and again, the arts and the music. So now that we're working in this field, it's just so important that we can cross over and actually do something. Well, it's just, I guess we do something. It's, I don't know. Again, we are.
It's something though. It is. Yeah, it's a huge part.
We're not the lifesavers, but we can still actively take part as musicians.
Of course, yeah, and to try and keep that culture and that music alive is incredibly important. We've seen that, again, I don't want to draw too many comparisons with it, but we have seen that in Ireland as well, how important that is and how strong that can be as a movement to keep culture and especially music alive. So, yeah, we have a bit of a role to play as musicians. And as I said earlier, we are very privileged. We are in very lucky positions. And even from a selfish point of view, it can give you a great sense of meaning and self-worth to get involved in these kind of things and to use your music for something other than, you know, playing for yourself and playing for a bunch of rich old white people. So go and use your music to do some good. Rosie, thank you so much for coming on. This was a very, I'm trying to think of the right word to describe that, but in any case, I really enjoyed it. And it was a great episode. And thank you very much for, taking the time and sharing it all with us. So, thank you. And obviously, if anyone wants to go and check you out, you're on all the social media. You're on Instagram anyway. Are you on everything else? Or anything else?
Except X.
Oh, yeah, we don't go on that, I don't use, I don't even call it X.
I think I'd go down well on that platform.
No, you can, Twitter can absolutely go fuck itself. I'm not going to. But you should all too. Anyone listen, if you're on Twitter, you're bad. Get off it. Get off Twitter. It's the fucking sewer, the place. But okay, great. Well then, go check you out. How can they find you? I'll put it in the description anyway.
And also, if you want to check out also the Conservatory Students for Palestine page, we do share a lot of information on art washing and the part that us as artists and students.
I'll tag you in that. Yeah. Awesome. Sounds great. Go follow them, everybody. Well then, thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you all next week, and thank you, Rosie.
No, thank you so much.